As U.S. and Ukraine got back to the negotiating table after the very public spat between Trump, Vance and Zelensky at the Oval Office, Russia shot down 337 Ukrainian drones at 10 locations in what it said is the largest air attack on its territory. Mayor Sergei Sobyanin confirmed that 73 drones were targeting the Russian capital, while at least 11 were downed at Ramensky and Domodedovo. The attack disrupted flights at major airports and train stations as well. Meanwhile, simultaneously, Volodymyr Zelensky reached Jeddah in Saudi Arabia for talks with the American side, led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Both of them met with the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who has positioned Saudi Arabia as a neutral peacemaker in this war. Today, the U.S.-Ukraine talks will resume, with Zelensky hopefully aware of how to deal with the Trump administration better, and Rubio sticking only to how the U.S. can help in the crucial mineral deal and the territorial security for Ukraine. Team Zelensky has his Chief of Staff, Andrei Yermak, Foreign Minister Andrei Sybiha, and Defense Minister Rustem Umerov. With the crucial mineral deal still unsigned, Ukraine reaching out to the U.S. and European Union repeatedly, and Donald Trump seen as being close to Vladimir Putin, Kremlin isn't blindly trusting America. Spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has been careful not to rush into agreeing with everything that America says. He said, and I quote, "Don't rush to put on rose-tinted spectacles, and that Russia must always be ready to defend its interests," unquote. So what's going to happen at Jeddah? Can the world finally breathe easy with Russia and Ukraine ending the war? Can America play that crucial role that it has been meaning to play in this war, that of a peacemaker? Let's try and decode this for you on Global Mirror tonight. I'm joined by voices from Moscow, Kyiv, as well as Washington, D.C. I'm joined by Sina Kondrateva, RT India editor. She's joining us from Moscow. I'm also joined by Volodymyr Solovian, head of department at the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, joining us from Kyiv. We're also expecting David Sofer, Republican strategist, to be joining us from Washington, D.C. Good evening and namaskar to both of you. Sina, let me begin with you. What are the expectations that Ukraine is going with into these talks at Jeddah? Extremely crucial. They come after that very verbal spat, very public verbal spat that happened between U.S. and Ukraine, between Zelensky, Trump and Vance. What is the Ukraine now expecting at the negotiating table?
Thanks for having me. And from my perspective, we will not receive any clear messages after the end of this round of negotiations, because this is only one of the first stages, after which there will be many others. With Russians and United States shift their position, now they try to keep themselves in between, like mediators between Kyiv and Moscow. And as for now, I think the main priority for United States is to receive the message from Kyiv that we may follow the proposals regarding the ceasefire under the current front line. And the first steps may be implementing the ceasefire in space, in airspace and maritime dimensions.
Okay. Sina Kondrateva, as far as Russia is concerned, the Kremlin spokesperson said that we shouldn't be blindly trusting America. Don't look at the U.S. with rose-tinted glasses. But the fact of the matter is that under the Donald Trump presidency, the United States of America stands side by side with Russia in this war. And, it's been pressurizing Ukraine to sort of agree to the conditions that Russia and U.S. are putting forward.
Yes, but...
Yeah, you're right. We have seen certain shifts.
Volodymyr, I'll come back to you.
In
this is for Sina.
Unprecedented shift. Yeah, I hope I am audible.
Yes, Sina, go ahead.
Yeah, let me know if I'm audible.
Go ahead, Sina, we can hear you.
Okay, sure. So we've seen unprecedented shifts definitely in U.S. policy towards Ukraine, the entire crisis that has been unfolding for the last 3 years. But Russian officials have voiced these concerns, and the expert community in Russia has definitely voiced the concerns that Trump administration should not be blindly trusted. The U.S. should not be blindly trusted because Russia has its own experience with the first Trump administration. Now there has been a lot of hype in the media about the resolution of Ukraine crisis, but we all understand, and Russian authorities, the officials, have stated many times that realities on the ground should be taken into considerations as the peace talks or potential peace talks are ongoing. So this is much more difficult than it just seems, you know, in the media reports and in some of the statements that Ms. Trump makes. So I don't think we should, while we see some efforts towards achieving a resolution or at least beginning the peace talks, because the peace talks have not yet began. These are Americans negotiating separately or trying to talk separately to Russia and Ukraine, which is, of course, much better than not talking at all, not having a dialogue at all for the last 3 years. We are very far away, probably, from the actual resolution of this conflict.
Volodymyr, comment on this. You know, the fact that Donald Trump administration and officials of his administration, including Pete Hegseth, have been saying that if you want to achieve peace, if you want this war to end, Ukraine should forget about joining NATO, and that you should not have expectations that you'll have territories which were there pre-2014. Would Ukraine agree with that kind of a condition that is put forward by the United States of America?
I think that in such position there is not cruel changes if we compare Biden administration and Trump administration, because under the Biden authority there also was such a possibility for Ukraine to join NATO in upcoming years. And if we have a look at the munition supplies and armory which United States deployed to Ukraine through last years, it was not enough to regain territories which Russia is occupying. So I think that yes, we are witnessing that rhetoric changed dramatically. But if we have a look at the real steps, at the real politics, it did not change in a crucial way. You know, so we just have, I mean, both Kyiv and Washington to calm down our rhetorics, I think, and I think that Ukraine may accept some demands which are crucial for Trump administration and put the ball to the Moscow, because the crucial challenge
Volodymyr,
is
what would those
for
conditions be?
I think
what
that
would those conditions be that Ukraine might accept?
I think that we have to negotiate with United States the crucial red flags for Ukraine. These are the army, which will be enough trained and well equipped to deter Russia from further aggression. Also, Ukraine cannot just wipe out all the territories which Russia still demands. I mean, 3 regions in its administrative borders, because Russia still pretend to occupy 4 regions of Ukraine in its administrative borders. That is completely cannot be discussed, and that is what Trump administration should push forward. And I think that if we will have a clear understanding how Americans will receive this shift in Moscow's demands, I think that will calm down the situation.
Okay. Okay. Okay, we're also joined by Vibhuti Jha. He's joining us from Washington, D.C. He's a former Republican candidate from the New York Assembly. Vibhuti Jha, good evening, namaskar. Here we're
Thank you.
talking about the peace talks that have begun, Vibhuti Jha. What's interesting to note here is that both Russia and Ukraine are looking at what the United States is bringing in as far as the conditions are concerned for Ukraine to accept to lead to an end to this war. For you, what are your expectations? What do you think the Donald Trump administration will be pushing for with Ukraine this time around with these talks?
Very tough to say that. Thank you very much for having me. Very tough to say what exactly which Trump would be saying, but all that I know is a welcome to peace. I mean, unnecessary lives are being lost for no reason at all, for promises that were made which were totally uncalled for. Having said that, I believe there will be territorial adjustments. Europe has always fancied, they have always been the First World, Second World War, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, all these countries have evaporated. USSR doesn't exist anymore. So Europe lives with a fetish of territorial adjustments. So there will be a territorial adjustment here. Ukraine will have to surrender certain of the territories that, once upon a time belonged to Russia itself. It's a sad scenario, but peace must return. And I think Trump will be focusing on that part, that, Ukraine will have to make concessions. Russia will have to give guarantees. And Ukraine must have some absolute valid assurances from European nations themselves and America themselves, so that Russia doesn't strike them again. And Zelensky or whoever is the leader of Ukraine will have to give a categorical assurance that no more NATO. That is also very important. That the entire thing started because how NATO misbehaved with going back on their promises to Russia that there will be no more addition to NATO team, and they have since then extended their territory. So imagine, I mean, I look at it from the American perspective, how United States reacted when Russia brought its nuclear weapons in Cuba. So think about it from that perspective, as the Christian saying goes, do to others what you want them to do to you. So that's what is important here. Russia will not accept, coming close of nuclear weapons at their doorstep in a country today which was once upon a time part of USSR. So I believe that this particular thing is very important. And Ukraine will get a kind of an assurance from America for the one very big reason, and that would be the mineral rights for US to mine there, which will necessitate US presence. And if US is present there, then Russia will find it extremely difficult to attack Ukraine then. So there need not be a written guarantee, but a tacit agreement that US presence of military as well as miners will prevent Russia from attacking Ukraine ever. That's very critical here.
Okay. Okay, Senior, one thing that Donald Trump has time and again said while negotiating in this war is how European role should increase in this, and how Europe should step up as far as its support to Ukraine is concerned. For Russia, would that be acceptable to Vladimir Putin if the American role decreases and the European role increases as far as, the finances, military, all of this support is concerned to Ukraine? Would that sort of ease out the tensions that Russia has, or would the NATO threat still be there?
NATO threat will still be there, but what is important, what Mr. Trump is saying, that you cannot be surviving.
I'll come back to you. This was for Senior.
Okay, sorry. My apologies.
I'll come back to you. Senior?
Thank you for the question. I think that's
Senior,
the most important part, as we have learned. I hope the world has learned in the past couple of weeks that this war is not about Russia, Ukraine, and this war is about Russia and the West, something that Russia has been stating for years and years now. So you asked if a certain recalibration will be acceptable to Russia. I don't think so. Russia has demanded from its Western, partners, former partners, that they should have a dialogue. They should have the guarantee that they should define how Russia and Europe and U.S., or let's say how Russia and NATO engage. That dialogue has been disrupted, and that's the root cause of the ongoing war. So unless those root causes are solved, there is no resolution to the conflict. Russia doesn't want to freeze the conflict, the hostilities, as for the battlefield lines. Russia is making gains on a daily basis. So Russia will not do that. And that's why I initially said that all this is easier said than done. We do not know exactly what is actually the U.S. plan is, what does it offer. What we heard, what is significant in U.S. stance shift is that Ukraine will not be in NATO. Okay, that's an important statement that we heard from Trump's administration, and if that is so, these are the kind of serious statements that Russia will consider. But we with Europe making very militaristic statements, I think this conversation will be very, very tough. And with, again, since I'm here in Moscow, seeing the attacks that are happening just, on the day that the U.S.-Ukraine talk started, if you remember, Mr. Trump said after the spat in Oval Office that Mr. Zelensky is not ready for peace. So I think the kind of attacks we saw today on Russia, the kind of attacks we saw on Hungary, on Druzhba pipeline, just signify that Ukraine is not really ready for peace talks.
Okay, let me get in Volodymyr on this. Volodymyr, this is something that Russia has been saying all day today. The fact that these talks are beginning and they're underway between America and Ukraine, and that Ukraine keeps talking about how this war should end, that there should be peace. But on a day like this, you've got one of the largest air attacks, drone attacks happening on Russian territory from the side of Ukraine.
For me, it's very right to discuss Ukrainian drone attacks against Russia, because Russia daily launch about 200 drones against Ukraine, targeting civilian infrastructure. And Kyiv, where I am now, and all my life I lived in Kyiv, and the capital of Ukraine is attacked by dozens of drones every night. In February, it was only 2 nights when there were no alerts. We go to sleep with radars, with air alerts, and it lasts for hours. And almost every year, such pictures which you are broadcasting now can be found at Ukrainian Kyiv districts in Kyiv city. And personally, I witnessed many times how these Iranian-type drones, which Russia launches against Ukrainian cities, are hit down. And I live in a residential area where there is no energy infrastructure, there is no military infrastructure, but still Russian drones are targeting civilian infrastructure, civilian targets, and many Ukrainians, hundreds of Ukrainians died just after and it was the reason of these attacks. So for me, it's completely right why we're discussing this topic, whether the lives, whether the security of citizens of Moscow is more vulnerable, more costly than lives of Ukrainians or even residents of other Russian cities. Because if you know, many other Russian cities are also targeted during the last months. But statistics tell us that Ukraine starves in much more severe way. So I completely do not understand what we are talking about regarding the news about recent drone attacks on Moscow.
Okay. Vibhutija, neither side is willing to step down. Neither side is willing to ease out the kind of tensions that already prevail. And here you have Donald Trump saying that I want to be the peacemaker. I want to be the one who brings an end to this war. But clearly that didn't happen the last time around, that there was that very public spat that happened between Zelensky, Trump and J.D. Vance. But with these talks happening, and I believe Trump's war envoy is also going to be meeting with Vladimir Putin, Stephen Witkoff. What are your expectations there, considering that, you can say that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump are close to each other and they're perceived to be, close to each other. But the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump has also said that he's been planning to put some sanctions on Russia amid the war. So really, is everything hunky-dory between the two leaders? Can we expect smooth sailing from here on?
Expectation of a smooth sailing would be, not recognizing the reality, because every country is trying to pull its own punches. But there is a very important universal truth that everybody needs to know, and especially Ukrainians. They need to know. There is no history. There is no example in history that any country has won a war by depending upon foreign money and foreign resources. There is no instance in history. And Ukraine is trying to prove that history wrong, and it's not happening because they are dependent on materials from all over the world, and they are dependent on money to fight an enemy that has huge amount of nuclear arsenal. So it is a very unrealistic thing, and the people who are responsible for this, in my humble opinion, is NATO, is the Europeans. Their itch to have a war for territorial adjustments has been at the root of all the conflicts around the world. If you look at it very seriously, it is a European imperialism and colonialism that is responsible for all the flashpoints in the world today, every single one of them. Europeans are responsible. And this time, what has happened, unfortunately for Europe, is that nobody bought the Ukraine problem was the global problem. And that's why they are having to deal with it. No imperial or colonial source army is dying over there. And that's the reason why the war is not coming to a close. It is actually a European battle. The sooner the Ukrainians realize that you cannot win a war against a mighty enemy dependent on money, material, and resources from other countries, it's not happening. So Ukraine is in a very bad shape, in a dilemma kind of a thing. They're dependent on everybody else for materials. They are not getting it. So when you are dependent like this, you can't win a war.
Okay.
And that is a very untenable proposition for Ukraine.
All right, we'll have to wait and watch what really comes off these talks. Hopefully that crucial mineral deal will be signed between America and Ukraine, and hopefully there will be no verbal fights, at least publicly, between America and Ukraine. We'll have to really wait and wait for actually all of these talks to conclude and finally have an end to this war. But thank you very much to all of you, Volodymyr, Vibhutija and Sina, for joining us on Global Mirror and sharing your perspective. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap on this broadcast. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Up next is Neha Koshi with Beyond the Headline.